Hey guys, my name is Maysam, and in this session we are going to talk about Java. In order to write and run code in Java language, you probably need an IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, and basically it's a program that will help programmers to code faster and much more efficient. There are a lot of IDEs out there that you can use to write and run your Java programs, but the one that we are going to use is IntelliJ. Luckily, Android Studio is built upon IntelliJ IDE, and we don't need to purchase anything in order to run our program in Java language. In order to run your program in Java, you need to start a new Android project studio. This time, instead of empty activity, we are going to choose this template, add no activity. Click on next. Then once again, you need to name your project. I'm going to call it Java session, and I will leave everything else as default. Just click on finish and wait until your project is built. In order to write and run your Java applications, you need to create a Java class. We will talk about what a Java class is in a few videos later, but for now we are just going to create one. Let's minimize this build pane down in here. Switch to Android view and go to app folder. Inside the Java folder, right click on this package and click on a new Java class. You can name your Java class whatever you want, but be aware that you can't use things like spaces or other weird characters. I'm going to call it Hello World. Leave everything else as default and press on OK. Inside your package, if you take a look, the Java class has been created. Let's minimize this project pane for now. As you can see, there are some pre-written code in here which IntelliJ has created for us. If you are using something like a text editor, you probably would need to write all of these yourself. But the beauty of using an IDE is that a lot of boring stuff like these codes in here are being produced by the IDE. This is the general schematic of a class in Java. It lives inside the package. It has a name like Hello World in here. It has an access modifier and also the type, which is class in this case. We will talk about all of these in object-oriented programming, but for now we are just going to use them. For running your applications, you need to have at least one method in your Java class, and that's called a main method. You can create your main method like this. You can type psvm, and IntelliJ is smart enough to know that what you are trying to write. By pressing tab, it will create the whole method for me. Once again, you can see a lot of new stuff like this static keyword and also this return type void and also methods themselves. We will talk about all of them in a few videos later, but for now we just need to know that in order to run our application, we need a class, a Java class that has at least one method called main. And if you take a look at this green triangle, it means that your code will start running from here, from this point. To make sure that our Java code is going to run, I'm going to print something in the console. In order to print something into your console, you simply can type SOUT and once again press tab and let the IntelliJ to create this line of code for you. Or you can simply type this line manually, system.out.println. We will talk about what this line will do, but for now, inside the parentheses, I'm going to pass a text like hello world. If we want to check that if this line of code is printing in our console, inside the curly braces of this main method, I need to right click and select this one, run hello world.main. If it's the first time that you are running Java, it will take some time to build your project, and after that you can see the message on the console. Sometimes, like me, if it's the first time that you are running Java, you will probably get an error in your console. In order to overcome this error, you can go in Build tab up in here and rebuild your project. After the build is finished, once again you can right click inside the main method and select this run hello world.main. This time this error should probably would be gone. And as you can see, this hello world text has been printed into our console. Just make sure that this run is selected from down in here in order to see your console. Okay, now let's talk a bit about this line of code in here. We can type it manually, like I can type system. Be aware that it's case sensitive and you can't type something like system with lowercase. It won't work. You can say system. As you can see, IntelliJ is always suggesting me options. By pressing dot, I can see a variety of options, but I'm going to type out in here. Out basically stands for output, meaning that we are outputting something into console. Later on in future videos, we will see that we have an in, which we can receive users input. But for now, let's just type out dot print line. This ln stands for line, and the other option is to just print something. The difference between print and println is that by using println, your text will be printed in the console and also the cursor will move to the next line. But by using this print, the text will be printed, but it stays at the same line and won't go to the next line. Okay, let's pass a text in here like Mesa. Notice that in Java, whenever you are writing a sentence, a line of code, you need to finish your sentences with a semicolon. Some languages like Python don't need a semicolon at the end of every sentence, but it's just syntactical, and in Java we need the semicolon. And if we don't put a semicolon at the end of every sentence, we will get a red warning, which is basically a compile time error, meaning that our code won't compile. It won't reach to the running process. Okay, let's add a semicolon and let's run our program once again. You can right click and run hello world.main from here. Also, you can use this triangle up in here. But if it's the first time, you should right click and run from right click menu. Or you can see the shortcut, which for Windows is Shift plus F10. For Mac, you can hover over this triangle and see your shortcut. Let's run it. You can see that Mesam has been printed. And if we switch this to line of code so that we could see the difference between print and println, let's run it once again. We can see that the first text has been printed but never goes to the next line. It stays at the same line and will execute whatever line comes after it. Also, it's a good thing to say that code in Java will be executed line after line. Okay, enough about this print sentence in here. Let's talk about variables in Java. I can comment these two lines of code and these two won't be executed. You can comment every line of code or everything you want by adding two slashes at the beginning of that line. Basically, the use of comment is for the programmer to make some notes for himself or maybe some coworker to know that what the code is doing, but you can add it and your code won't be executed. Let's run it and see it for ourselves. You can see that nothing has been printed into the console. You can save simple data inside a variable. In some languages like Python and JavaScript, you don't need to define the type of data that you are saving, like a number or maybe a character. You don't need to define the type of your variable, but in Java, it's syntactical to define the type. I can define a variable by saying, for example, int. Int stands for integer, which is a number. Int number, let's call it, we can name it whatever we want, is equal to, for example, 1. Once again, we need to finish our sentence with a semicolon. I have defined a variable which its data type is integer, its name is number, and its value is 1. After this line of code, you can use this variable to, let's say, add some number to it, or maybe print it into the console. Let's try to print it into our console. Once again, I can say South and press Tab. This time, instead of passing a text in here, I'm going to pass my number. Let's run our program and see the result. You can see the number has been printed into the console. You can save positive and negative numbers and also 0 inside an integer, but if you want to save a decimal number inside an integer, you can't do that. For example, I can say second number is equal to 1.5. I will get a compile time error. In order to save decimal numbers in Java, you can define a new variable of type double. Let's call it decimal number is equal to 1.5. Once again, let's print this line. You can see that 1.5 has been printed. Also, there is another option. The other data type that you can use in order to save decimal numbers is called float. We won't be using float in this course that much, but it's good to be familiar with the name. Okay, let's call it float number is equal to 1.5. Of course, if I put a semicolon, I will get some compile time error, and that's because every decimal number in Java by default is a double, and if you want to use float, you need to cast that number to float. You can cast your decimal number into a float by adding a pair of parentheses before that number and type float inside the parentheses. By casting, I mean that we are telling the Java compiler that this is going to be a float number and not a double number. The difference between float and double is that you can save larger numbers inside a double, and basically it will occupy more memory RAM in your device. We won't be using that much of a float, but it's good to see it. The other data type that I'm going to introduce is a character. You can define a character by typing char. Let's call it character is equal to. This time you can't put just a character. You need to put it inside a single quotation, like this. Once again, finish our sentence with a semicolon. And if we want to print our character, we can use that sound. Let's run our program. You can see that our character has been printed. Inside this single quotation, you only can put one character, but also you can put something like copyright Unicode. For example, in here I can say \U00A9. This seems a little bit weird, but if we run our program right now, we will get the copyright symbol in our console. You can search for Unicode value of every symbol that you want, like copyright and register symbol in the internet by searching something like the Unicode for copyright symbol, something like that. I'm just going to put C once again in here. But what if we want to store a text inside a variable? Well, we can use something called a string. Notice that this time the S should be in uppercase. We can say a string, let's say text is equal to, once again, my name, Mesa. Let's print our text. You can see that our text has been printed. You can see that the color of this string is different from other data types, and that's because the string is not a primitive data type. It's a class in Java. Once again, we will talk about classes in future videos, but for now, it's good to know that you can have different operations on your text by typing the name of your variable and type dot. You can see a list of options, a list of operators that you can have on your text, but more on that in future videos. The other data type that I'm going to talk about is a Boolean. We can type Boolean. Let's say our Boolean is equal to true. It's a kind of data type that you can only have true or false as its value. It's useful for checking different conditions, which we are going to talk about conditional statement in the next video, but we also can print our boolean by saying our boolean. These are the most common used data type that you use in your Java applications, but if you want to take a look at all of them, you can check the Oracle documentation, but that's really not necessary. These are all the ones that we are going to use in this course. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about arithmetic operators in Java. But before that, let's delete all of this so we won't be distracted. Once again, I'm going to define two integers. One a is equal to, let's say, 6, and another one, int b, is equal to 2. We can have different operations on these two integers. For example, we can add them together. The way that we do that is by saying a plus b. But this is not a sentence. We need to save the answer inside another integer. I can say answer is equal to a plus b. And if we print answer this time and run our application, we should see the answer, which is 8. This plus operator is one of the arithmetic operators in Java. The other one is deduction, which is minus, of course. Let's see the result of that. It has deducted b from a. Also, we have multiply, which is a star, and a slash for division. These are 4 basic operations, arithmetic operators in Java. We have others as well. For example, we have the remainder, which is this percent sign. Let's see what that does. It should print 0. It will divide 6 by 2, and it will give us the remainder of that. For example, if we had 5 in here, the result of, or the remainder of a divided by b is going to be 1. These are the most common used arithmetic data types. There are others as well. Once again, you can check all of them in Oracle documentation. But be careful about this slash, because, for example, this b becomes 0. Now we will get some errors. And that's because it's not arithmetically true. We can't divide any number by 0. You can see that we are getting an arithmetic exceptions. We will talk about exceptions in future videos in this session, but for now, be aware that you can't put 0 as the second number. But right now, if I divide a by b, which is 5 by 2, we should get 2.5, but we will get to, let's see. And that's because we are saving the answer inside an integer. If we want to get the exact value, we can change the type of this data type, this variable, to double. And of course, we need to cast it in here as well. Cast it to double. This time, if I run my application, I will get exactly 2.5. Okay, I think that's a good point to stop the video in here. In the next video, we will talk about more operators in Java, and also we will talk about conditional statements. See you in the next video.